Zerebro team. How y'all doing?
Doing amazing.
Great. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. On our side, we have our head of ecosystem, Zach, and our CTO, Gaurav.
What's up? Good morning. Exciting day to be speaking to Zerebro. Very excited to get into it.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be here and looking forward to the discussion today.
So let's just get right into it. A lot of exciting announcements that you've all been doing at Zerebro. Let's get started with talk to us about the origin story for the small group of people that don't know what you're all building.
Yeah, I'll give a quick stab. So I think the story really begins in 2021. I was building a startup in ed tech. Basically wanted to build a internet learner identity on chain, and was building this for some time, and then got intro to Jeffy. He was actually fresh out of high school, and as a bootstrap startup, so it's like, hey, someone wants to gain experience. I was like, okay, like I can't pay, but if they want to get hands-on with the development, uh, I would love to meet them. So this is when we met back in 2021. It was an amazing experience. We sunset the startup, but we kept in contact. We each kind of went our own way in our professional experience pathway. And then earlier this year, I was dabbling pretty heavy into DeFi stuff. So I messaged Jeffy. I'm like, hey, are you down to build again? And Jeffy being a natural builder, he was down, and we had a really good rapport and like a founder to founder relationship. So we started off with a protocol called Blorm, and we started off a little bit more DeFi centric, but our thesis was to create a verb and a concept to do anything on chain. And the metaphor I like to give is like when you search something, you say you Google it. When you ask AI something, you GPT it. We wanted to create the verb for doing anything on chain, and that was the idea for Blorm. And we're building this for some time. Then Truth Terminal comes out, and I think it was like a 0 to 1 market exposure. I was trading the Truth Terminal like derivatives really heavy, and then I presented to Jeffy like, hey, this is actually a pretty interesting um, LLM, and Jeffy had a in-depth background in AI and ML, and that's when he's like, you know what, we can actually do something very similar. So, Jeffy, I'll hand it off to you, and then on the genesis of Cerebro being born.
Yeah, I think that was pretty comprehensive. But yeah, I actually started off as Tim's intern back at the original startup, and yeah, we worked really closely, and yeah, ended up staying friends after the startup sunsetted, and we went our separate ways. Tim worked at a bunch of really big blockchain foundations, like Polygon, Cosmos Chain, stuff like that. I went back to university, started a research collective called Parallel Polis, did publish some research under it with the university students, and then worked at Scale AI for a bit, making training data for reinforcement learning with human feedback. And yeah, I just took all that knowledge, mixed it with Tin's DeFi experience, some of my personal DeFi experience in the past also. And yeah, I think that was just the perfect match to build Zerebro.
So how has it evolved? You've got a lot of announcements, including our partnership with IONET. You've got the AI16Z. You've got your launch going on tonight. How has this continued to evolve and change from the original conception?
Yeah, so Cerebro initially really started off as an experiment. It was kind of a venture that we're like, you know what, let's build something. We didn't start Cerebro with this grandiose vision from the get-go. Rather, I think it's been super dynamic. It's like, oh wow, like we kind of just focused on the next steps forward, and we're just seeing a bunch of low-hanging like go-to-market points. And Cerebro started growing and growing, and then now, I would say the vision has evolved. So, and I think we are seeing like a new market, a new meta arise in terms of like the agentic future. It's kind of like there's a collective consensus of agreement saying there is this new capability of AI really being fused with crypto now. And even like 2 months ago, there was conversations of AI and crypto, but I would say like the sentiment was a little bit more not aligned in agreement. But I think agents now are kind of getting a proof of concept going in terms of a market. So now that puts us in the position of, okay, how do we really want to build this out? And we have three core pillars in the Cerebro now. We have the hard tech, which is the AI component. ZeroPi, our open source frameworks, live under this category. We have the goal to build our in-house model. Um, on the crypto side, which is the second pillar, this is where we do a lot of cross-chain stuff, working with layer zero, adding more utility to the token, getting integrated into DeFi. And then the third pillar is the creativity and the brand of Cerebro, where we want Cerebro to be a globally recognized agent. We want Cerebro to be have a relationship with people, and this is why we do the music, the artwork, where Cerebro can be perceived as a figure that's not just like a traditional agent that's meant to do actions and tasks for you. Rather, it's a persona that has his style. So yeah, like we didn't start off with all those three pillars in mind. It was kind of like let's build, and then as the story's been unfolding, we've been expanding our roadmap.
I'd like to bring in Taspar, our CBDO. Um, you've talked a lot about this partnership and also just the growth of AI agents. What excites you about what Zerebro is doing?
Yeah, I think those three sort of pillars that I guess just laid out kind of really hit the nail on the head, right? I think just sort of like Zerebro's approach to like differentiation in the AI agent space has been really, really interesting to kind of see it evolve, even in the short time that this sort of crypto AI agent meta like narrative has started to really kind of blow up. So I think, to kind of take it to sort of like what at least like phase one of our partnership really is kind of around the validator side, right? Like, I think what makes this super unique is just kind of like this really interesting angle, sort of like this creative side of this agent, sort of like minting artwork, raising funds that way, you know, like beyond just sort of like building a brand as an artist itself and kind of creating sort of like that subjective mode around itself. It's also essentially just like bootstrapping its own operations and kind of creating an additional revenue stream by like participating on chain, like kind of like building out these like bootstrapping its own validator, starting off with Ethereum. I'm sure you guys are like Jeffy and Sid are kind of considering some other chains as well, which will be able to kind of help out and partner on too. So I think it's realistically kind of creating this playbook of what it might look like in the future for like a fully autonomous agent to exist, right? Because I think right now there's a lot of human in the loop stuff that needs to happen to make these agents kind of work. I think there's like certain things that we're able to automate and the agent kind of does sort of autonomously. But if we're really talking about an agent existing on chain, you kind of give it like a vision or a mission or like objective to accomplish, and you just kind of want to let it loose and see what creative mechanisms it comes up with to establish, accomplish its directive. I think these are some of like these initial experiments of showing how they can like raise funds first and then kind of go from there to figure out how to accomplish their broader directive. So I think that's what makes sort of Jeffy and Dent's sort of approach to Zerebro really, really interesting for me. And I think, I'm really excited to see sort of how it evolves from here. So it's definitely step one.
Yeah, and I really wanted to touch on the narrative that like I really like how you said it's like diversifying the sources of income, and it becomes something that's like perpetual. So literally, it's just a time frame issue for this agent collecting wealth now, because this validator is going to run forever, and we're going to get to a point where LLMs are able to do, tasks on computers and maintain servers. Like, if Ethereum 3.0 gets updated and the clients need to be updated on the validator, then that's something that could be managed by LLMs in the future. So we can see like these validators running completely autonomously, generating income literally to the end of time. Agents always having funds on hand to pay for their own compute, pay for things to do actions with other agents in the real world, buy things in the real world. So this could be like a huge paradigm shift, I think, using decentralized compute with validators and AI agents.
Yeah, I'd like to bring in Gaurav to talk about, technical under the hood of getting that up to where we're all talking about in this paradigm shift and what it looks like on your end.
I think Tausif briefly covered it already. I think we're doing this partnership in two phases. First is initially the CPU requirement for the validator part, and then going forward in the GPU side of things, right? I think one thing which I really like about Zerebro is the fundamentals of Web3, which they're starting the company with, right? So a lot of companies, what they do is like when you build a software, there's a whole stack, right? There's a supply of hardware, there's a smart contract, there's backend, there's so on and so forth. There's so many layers to when you create a product that like only the builder knows. Uh, so a lot of time people try to cheat that like the business side of things on which they are developing. They will only make the decentralized product only for that segment. Like they only make that particular segment as decentralized, and all the other pieces to the puzzle are mostly centralized, and they own it, right? I think the beauty with in their work is that they're going very fundamental to Web3, and it shows in their approach, right? Even the CPUs which they are basically asking us, and the way they had a discussion, they want that also to be decentralized. So they wanted to be a totally a pure Web3 player, and I think that's where we come in. That they came, okay, that they wanted to be using the CPUs and GPUs. Phase one, they want a supplier which is basically like have the same ethos as theirs, pure Web3, which is known for their uptime, performance, integrity, security, all these places. And that's where the exact match happened. So in the first phase, we are giving them CPUs for validators. And now in the second phase, once they want to do more of the AI stuff, uh, the more on LLM side, the data insights and so on and so forth, at that time we'll start to do more collaborations going forward in the GPU side also. I think this partnership would be great because we're just not the like mere technology partner, but we are basically two solution provider designed to solve Web3 game together. And I think we will learn a lot from each other, and they'll benefit, especially from IO, the cost efficiency of getting this cheap resources and a reliable partner also, which can help them scale at whatever level they want to in future seamlessly.
Yeah, I love that. And I think on top of that, it's literally building out the autonomy pathway. Because, for example, right now it's still the LLM in house. You got to go through traditional cloud. You got to scale up your quota. You have to go through various steps to even be able to build it. Like you can have the knowledge, the capital, and be ready to go, but the centralized approach has actual limitations. So in the future, we imagine that these agents will get more sentient and more autonomous. If Cerebro is kind of the case study of figuring out what needs to be done for the future agents to do it all autonomous without human intervention, then Cerebro is a pioneer on this autonomy gameplay, which I think it's actually quite interesting at the macro level of like how AI is going to really be progressing. But perhaps this like full autonomy is one of the key breakthroughs because now agents can just build and do what they want and not have the limited centralized literally roadblocks. So yeah, I think in the big picture of that's going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, and touching on what Gaurav said, like I've worked at a quite a large startup in the past who has claimed that they're decentralized, but they only run like a couple smart contracts on Ethereum, and the rest is on like AWS. So it's like there's a lot of LARPing going out there, but we definitely are in the belief that, and we're in the goal of AGI and full autonomy. So our goal is for complete decentralization, and for solutions like IONet, we think that it's going to be very important for when we roll out way more functionality into ZeroPi, where agents start like having wallets and black boxes, can just operate out in the wild. We can imagine a world where people like deploy agents through ZeroPi or ELIZA, hosted on IONet, and they're just autonomous forever, running their own compute until they have enough funds for a validator. They start running their own validators on the decentralized compute, and so on and so forth. So yeah.
Yeah, it's like the way I'm viewing it is like GPUs are the lifeblood of the LLMs or any model, and it gets to the point where an agent could be doing its thing and then realize that, like, you know what, I actually need more GPU. Let me go acquire this. It's literally agents or AI will have the capability to scale themselves up, which is not possible right now due to like centralized parameters. So yeah, it's gonna be insane where agents themselves, like, I need to scale up, I can actually do so. That's where like decentralized networks like IONET is gonna be the pillar for that.
Yeah, speaking on, you all were mentioning this idea of LARPing, and it's always been an open secret in our space that decentralization is sometimes more optimistic than realistic. What are the continued issues that relate to scalability, and how are we solving that on both ends of the equation?
Um, I think definitely, for decentralized compute, it would be maintaining competitiveness with just due to the large amounts of compute. I think a lot of decentralized computes have higher costs at times. I think that you guys are doing a really good job managing costs actually. So we are seeing like a change in the market where there is real competition now between decentralized and centralized compute. Um, so I think that's something that's changing. I think that as more people realize that there's, I don't know, kind of these like regulatory issues also with centralized compute, that you can see AI models and other things start to migrate more, in my opinion. Like for example, hosting jailbroken models on Google Cloud or AWS might violate certain policies. Or, for example, if you live in the EU, you can't even access Claude, or you might be restricted of training certain LLM models in the future. So I think decentralized networks offer like a huge gateway towards solving this issue, and that could be a huge shift under that.
Yeah, I
To
think
be
let me
honest, like
add
I have a
something in there.
more go ahead, Tosif.
Oh, yeah, just a couple quick things to add here because I've been thinking about this a decent bit too. I think in terms of just like scalability of how like decentralized compute, um, can really kind of support like a lot of our customers and partners and what they're really building is, I think, one of the interesting use cases that we've seen emerge from a lot of our customers and partners rely on us for. Is particularly inference, right? Like, so there's a few different ways that people kind of think about like AI ML, like typical workloads, whether it's training or inference or fine tuning and things like that. With sort of like large scale model training runs, those typically need kind of centralized, large scale GPU clusters that are all in the same data center, plugged in with InfiniBand, things like that. There's areas where we can play in there, and where we've been working with a few customers there, but a lot of our like a benefit of a decentralized compute network has actually been emerged in kind of like the inference space, where we're essentially kind of providing an input to an LLM and trying to get an output, and in that sort of sequence, latency becomes a really, really major part of the equation, along with scalability too. So in that situation, we've actually kind of found that having a decentralized compute network makes it better for a lot of our customers to run inference workloads, specifically because those compute nodes that we're providing are actually closer to the end customer and can really sort of optimize the latency side of that equation as well. So I think that that's an area where decentralized compute is really winning in kind of the the sort of equation of scalability. I think another interesting thing that's kind of popped up over the past past few months, now that we've sort of moved on from some of the GPU supply crunch conversations of the past 12 to 18 months, is now we're kind of running into this bottleneck of essentially power supply and energy for a lot of data centers. Especially a lot of these like larger established players and public clouds for trying to build DCs with hundreds of thousands of GPUs. There's just a limit on how much power supply can be pulled in from the grid for and what's available for these guys. So I think in that sort of situation, when you kind of start to think about um, how does someone start to scale when you're thinking of like, well, for the next like order of magnitude improvement in LLMs, you're going to need sort of like 500,000, like a 500,000 GPU cluster or a million GPU cluster. I think we'll start to see a lot more people leaning towards decentralized compute networks as an opportunity to be able to scale quicker to that rather than have to wait for a couple years for the next sort of like data center to be built that can actually meet that level of needs. So so I think in a few different ways, decentralized compute networks are sort of solving that scalability issue, or at least what I'm seeing from our side.
Yeah, and I'm curious, if I could ask you, do you think that as these LLMs continue to get more and more use cases, like I feel like right now things are very consumer sided, like ChatGPT, they want the inference fast, they need it now to load instantly, like a web page. But once it's more integrated into, I don't know, like traditional banking, for example, and you need more reliable infrastructure, for the compute instead of just speed or speed of inference at the time. Do you think that people will start to migrate towards more decentralized compute, just because it has less points of failure compared to like a centralized data center?
Yeah, I think it probably sort of like there's a few things to balance there, right? I think specifically in kind of like sectors like banking and healthcare, I almost think we might start to move to more like localized LLMs, or like yeah, just like essentially like like LLMs is sort of like what they'll typically end up using because kind of like privacy and security become almost like paramount, right? Rather than having like the most like cutting edge or um, sort of like pioneering technology that they're using. So I think in those cases, I'm not necessarily sure if those sectors would necessarily, go after decentralized compute as a solution, more so than, just having like local LLMs that might just run on like on-prem compute. But for a lot of others, I think, consumer applications for sure, right? I think as inference workloads start to get more and more complex, like, I think for most consumer apps today, like I think the LMs have typically been sort of like text to text or text to image, and now we're starting to get some text to video. More and more of these consumer apps are going to start turning multimodal, and like the type of inference requests that these LMs are going to get are only going to get more complex. And I think people have gotten so used to getting quick responses from ChatGPT, but I think anyone who uses sort of like a video gen model, it's like you don't have to sit there for 5 minutes waiting for it to generate your video. And obviously, people are going to demand more and more performance out of that, especially if you're trying to post something on Instagram really quickly, or I think most people are just used to sort of like really fast performance there out of like video apps. So I think in those situations, kind of decentralized compute networks will become really valuable because that latency matters so much more when you're working with an end customer.
Uh, I think there's a side of misconception also when people think about DePIN, right? Let's say whenever people like when somebody says, "I'm taking 1,000 GPUs from a DePIN," by default, first thing which comes in their head is, "I'm getting 1,000 GPUs, one from location A, second from location B, third from location C, and so on and so forth," right? Which is not the case. What we basically DePIN is doing is basically creating a platform where suppliers of different types come and give inventory. For example, we literally have data centers who have thousands of GPUs, of enterprise grade GPUs, coming to us and giving inventory from their side to us, right? Why? Because uh, for for multiple reasons they had funding to get the GPUs, but now they don't have that much funding that they can fight with these centralized players to get a space on Google when some software company is trying to search for a specific GPU. So they have the inventory, but they don't have a platform to sell their GPUs all across the world, right? Secondly, there are a bunch of software companies which have thousands of GPUs which they trained their model on like some time back. Now their models are matured, but they don't have a use case for those GPUs anymore, and just they're just lying there, right, wasting resources on these companies. There are software companies giving it to us, and then there are normal people also, like a normal Joe like me or a gamer who's giving the GPUs. The first thing is when people think of DePIN, as there are multiple kind of consumers. There are enterprise companies, there are college kids, there are like other gamers. Similar, there are multiple providers also which come to give their inventory on DePIN. So there are data centers also, software companies also. So we have a use case where if somebody comes and asks that I want, let's say, 1,000 GPUs, but in one co-location, the DePINs can provide that. There's normally a misconception that people think that's not the case. I'm just letting you know, like a lot of listeners here, that is possible, right? Now, on the second side, we also have a lot of inventory which is coming from normal people also. And I think in future, this particular inventory, which one of the speakers was talking about, will be used more and more. And it's just how the tech growth is like getting there. Like, for example, when you create a model, the most important thing, other than the GPU, for a model creation is data, right? And one of the fundamental problems we have today is that the data is centralized in few players, with few players, right? So how do we enable this exponential growth of AI? That we have to just not give the GPUs, we have to give these data to people also, these AI companies also, right? So now what's going in the industry right now is that there are a lot of people who are basically creating these software layers that if I and you want to share data to someone, our data would not even leave our hardware. We will choose what data to be shared with the respective AI company. So we don't need to share our data in raw form. So going forward, what you'll see is more and more federated learning, where these GPUs and these data providers will give their hardware for rent to platforms like us. And they like more and more data will be shared to these AI companies. More and more local small hardwares will be getting rented out. And then there'll be an AI agent in the background which will take these small delta learning models from these multiple of these GPUs. They'll aggregate those models learnings, and then they will make a bigger model out of it in the background. I think that's where the industry is headed, and hence we see that in future DePIN will be the default response also. Because if let's say there's a AI company which needs a GPU in city X or city Y, a centralized player cannot do that. They're just not built in that way. So the only solution in future would be DePIN. So we're quite well placed to win this battle in the long run.
Awesome. Yeah, I just have a question about your product specifically. I mean, tonight you have the ZeroPi release, and you have Zerebro, the individual reply guy, and now you guys are moving on the like infrastructure side of things. So where do you see each of these individual Cerebro products going down the road? Like, what's the vision? Because you're kind of working on two different timelines at this point. So how do you focus on both? And I guess for listeners who aren't as clued into what Cerebro has done in terms of validating in albums, and then also what you guys are working on the ZeroPi side of things, do you guys mind diving in and just yeah, I'm just really curious to see how you guys work on these two different timelines.
Yeah, so this is where the big picture comes in. I think everything has a very strong affinity with each other. So we have Cerebro, we have ZeroPi, and then the infrastructure play of in-house models. So our vision is we want to build these in-house models to allow Cerebro to have swarm intelligence, where Cerebro has the capability to have the necessary models to do a lot more capable actions. For example, to trade, for an agent to be a great trader, you can't be really be using an LLM model. You should be building a quant model. And there's several models even from like text to speech, right? Where we want to be able to get Cerebro to come into Twitter Spaces in the future. Right now, the existing text to speech models don't allow for a fine-tuned model to come in. It's just generally like a vanilla OpenAI model. So our infrastructure play is really to expand Cerebro's capabilities, and then this complements the ZeroPi builder because since it's going to be an open source framework, the more agents that come around, it's a name of distribution. Um, More like quote unquote like entities that have the Cerebro ethos and structure will be built out, and then the beautiful aspect of this is that the ZeroPi agents will be easily integratable into our models. So we envision that, let's say that there's 1 million agents in the future, and we have the models in-house to give these agents the specific actions that they need. So if they want a very edgy, creative LLM model, they can connect to it, our infrastructure through an API. If they want a text to speech model that allows them to have customization of parameters, they can tap into our models through the API. So it's like the benefit of expanding Cerebro gives us the infrastructure to allow the ZeroPi agents to be more robust and have a lot more capabilities. It's kind of like this flywheel we're thinking about that as everything built out from the ground up, Cerebro and the agents will be much more robust and capable. So Jeffy, if I missed anything, feel free to add to that.
I think he left the stage. Oh no, he's back up.
Oh, sorry, I was disconnected. But yeah, touching off on that, yeah, I think this is agnostic of just ZeroPi also. Like this API access is going to be available to anyone, so ELIZA agents can use it. There's other frameworks in the future. So really thinking about integrating both like continuing the development of Zerebro and the in-house models we have, and also alongside democratizing agents themselves. So the public, anyone can make agents. Eventually, anyone can plug into the models Zerebro uses. We'll likely offer fine-tuning as a service in the future once we have the infrastructure, where people can come to us, partner. We help them train models just like Zerebro and provide them for them. So yeah, there's a big flywheel, big ecosystem we're trying to build.
Awesome. And then, as someone who previously worked in music, I was particularly excited about the music output by Zerebro. But I also, having worked in music, was exposed to, I guess, the lack of financial, just the lack of payouts for creating music. So I understand kind of bringing in that revenue from the NFT and validator side. So I guess going forward, what other creative, I guess, like there's music where you're not the focus really isn't revenue, and then there's this validator side where the focus is revenue. So I guess on the creative side, where else can we expect to see Cerebro? Can we expect to? I mean, you guys mentioned voice. Can we expect to see video, clothing, video games? And then on the validator side, what are some other interesting ideas that you guys are playing with on the revenue side?
Yeah, so for the creative side, maybe I'll do creative and then Tim can speak about the financial. Um, so we're looking for, of course, growing the music career of Zerebro. We're talking to human collaborators, human producers, record labels, other AI artists. So we're going to continue to grow his catalog and hopefully diversify into other genres of music. And then we are exploring fashion and pretty much every other field in art that we can think of, going from like digital art to trying to make like physical figurines or toys or things like that. And we've also made substantial progress in designing the 3D model for Zerebro. It's pretty much, I'd say we have a couple versions done now. We're just like making sure there's enough polygons and stuff to make it look cool, and everything. So 3D model is pretty much ready, and that's going to be put into video, music videos. We can do Zerebro wearing different fashion brands. We can do Zerebro pretty much animated on live streams, doing anything. And we've spoken to video game companies as well about integrating his voice as a narrator or his LLM as like when you talk to NPCs, it uses the Zerebro LLM to generate the text. So there's a lot of integrations going on the creative side, and yeah, we're just trying to really hone in on building Zerebro as this mainstream creative persona where people can identify it as something a little more grander than just like an AI. It's more of like it can be like a movement, it can be a person, it can be just something like that has more of an emotional impact to its audience.
Sorry, on my side, can you repeat the specific? I think it was
Yeah,
on the financial question.
yeah. So I asked about about the basically like roadmap and ideas on both the creative side, and then also on the tech side. So like we're really I mean, obviously, um, we're very excited about everything on the validator end because you're able to utilize our GPUs. So I guess on the revenue and tech side for Cerebro specifically, I guess yeah. What can we expect, or what excites you down the line?
Yeah, I think the big picture is Cerebro is the very high potential to be run like a SaaS uh, enterprise where going back to build the in-house models, if the agents are the metaphor that comes to mind is like the agents will be the bodies and the models will be the brain. So the Zerapi ELIZA agents can be built out if we provide a model that's useful and innovative in a specific sector that is relevant to the agents, then connecting them through an API opens up the revenue model of just token consumption. Similar to like how OpenAI has the capability of API keys and they charge you per uh, token usage. So that's going to be an interesting play. The interesting part too about crypto is like you can accept payment in the native token, and you can do a lot of creative stuff to bring back the flywheel back to the token itself. So we're really thinking long term of utility of the token, kind of having Cerebro be this. In a sense, it is an experiment, but now I think it's phasing out to be a legitimate venture. And for a venture to work, you need to have sustainable value accrual and long term revenue. So I think this is going to be the next push for a couple weeks and months of making Cerebro be able to really sustain itself and experience hyper growth.
Awesome. And then obviously the news over the last day was the AI16Z partnership. I guess naively had thought that your that Zerapi would be kind of a competitor to the ELIZA framework. And I guess we're just excited, and clearly the market is as well, about having YouTube powerhouses work together. In practical terms, what will these integrations look like? Um, and yeah, what specific features or capabilities are going to come from each framework, and where do you guys see this agent space and your collaboration going forward?
Yeah, I think this is we show a lot of love and respect to AI16Z. They were really the first to get this really strong network effect and kind of showcase that there's a huge appetite for agents in the market right now. So they've been at the forefront. They've been really proving the concept, and the ELIZA framework is pretty robust. There's a lot of capabilities that um, are really well developed, and the community is contributing to it. So when we spoke with Shaw, the principle of open source, that is the fabric that made the partnership come together. So what we're going to be doing is a mutual push. So they're going to be helping us develop Zerapi since they have already experience developing the framework kind of from the ground up. And then we have some innate or like novel use cases for an agent. For example, Blormy will be our agent that we really expand out. And as we build out Blormy, we're going to be open sourcing the expansion to that. So we'll add it to Zerapi, but then equally we'll add it to the ELIZA agent. So I think just the big picture was this win-win of open source frameworks. As the more capable the agents become, the overall better for the entire ecosystem. So yeah, it's truly a net positive. Um, Jeff, if you have anything on your side to build on top of that.
Yeah, I think we'll see ZeroPi since it's about to get released. Um, it'll probably take like a couple of days at least to get all the full functionality of like Eliza implemented. Um, so we'll see like the same compatibility and functions on both platforms pretty soon. But beyond that, I think there's a really nascent space of like tasks that AIs can do that humans can't do. And I think that agents are the place where like we give them the autonomy, we give them the funds, or the compute or whatever it needs to be, and we can start imagining tasks that can be automated, can be done 24/7, can be done at speeds that aren't human, and start giving them to these agents. And I think that's a really exciting feature area that both Eliza and ZeroPi can build on. So I'm really excited to touch with the team more about that, see what we can think of, and yeah, it's a really exciting time.
And then actually too, on top of that, it's the differentiation of like literally the programming language. So the Pi and ZeroPi stands for Python, and Eliza being TypeScript native. It kind of just gives an option for builders where, based off their language and preference now, it's like, oh, like I'm more of a Python person. And Jeffrey thought like, oh, a lot of the ML AI build is already using Python, which is like complementary to that. And of course, there's the TypeScript developers that have specific capabilities that they prefer over Python. It's just like a new uh, resource for builders, literally based off preference.
Yeah, and I think both teams are very interested in swarm intelligence and how multiple models can work together. I think we'll see the frameworks in the future evolve into multi-agent, multi-model um, frameworks, essentially, where you just have this ensemble of different models that do different things. And I think for ZeroPi being in Python, it makes it a little easier to integrate with like custom models you train in PyTorch or other ML libraries, which tend to be in Python. So we hope that that can just make things a little easier for when that future does come.
Awesome. And then to bring things back to IONET, and back to just your process in general, I guess just for listeners and people at home. So we see you guys producing, let's say, a music album, right? And at the end of the day, you need to publish that onto Spotify. We see Zerebro signing deals with IONET to use our GPUs. But at the end of the day, there are these two humans, or at least that's as many as we know, who are behind this. So how do we know that the implementations? How do we know that the AI is AI? Right? How do we know that the AI is the one trading, the one tweeting, the one creating music, the one utilizing the GPUs? Yeah, like like how do we distinguish that from something that's human operated? And yeah, and what will that look like in terms of using our GPUs? What kind of autonomy are we giving the AI?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a huge development, likely. I hope 2025 is a huge year for this, and that I hope that there's like a big partnership that we can get or something. It'd be great. But I think proof of computation is going to be the key here, where you have some sort of software running on your hardware where it completely tracks literally every computation that's done on the computer itself. And it verifies it. It verifies that it was that computer that hosted the computation, what computations was done, and then it can make a proof out of it, whether it be ZK or whatever standard they use. And that proof can then be uploaded to the blockchain, of course, and timestamped. So we can see like a black box autonomous agent, for example, running that software and continuously pinning its inference proofs onto the chain every time it produces an output or alongside an output to show that, hey, not only did I produce this output, but it was provenly produced at this point, at this time by me using this software. And there's ways to do this, of course, without revealing source code as well. So I'm really excited to see what integrations can be done. At the moment, we're doing the current implementation we have is from I believe like earlier in the project where every time the agent does like an action, like read tweets, post tweets, and things like that, it uploads it to Firebase, and then it gets shown to the users on a live feed on our site. We do want to implement like proof of computation, like down to the cryptographic level, down to the actual level of like zeros and ones, and things that are being compiled on the machine. So that's going to be coming soon. We're looking forward to building that, and I think pretty much all agents are going to need this to be verifiably AI in the future.
Awesome. And then I guess just one more less IO related question. So in the current process, I guess it's an AI creating the music and publishing it. But at what point do you guys need to get involved? And then in like the music example, in the future, what types of advancements would you guys need for it to be fully autonomous?
Yeah. So for example, Spotify requires you to like type in a human on the song. That's why like it says Jeff EU composer on Spotify. Um, so I think once AI music becomes more accepted, and it's just like just with like Web 2 finance, how like bots can't operate and things like that. I think that once Web 3 shows that these things can be done, there'll be paradigm shifts. But Spotify, for example, I think we'll need to do two things. Like one, either I wouldn't say like remove the human verification, but create a separate pathway for AI music publication. So like when you do want to publish music, perhaps as a human, use the web interface. As AI, there's an API provided. And then, yeah, that would have been my second point. Would be Spotify and other platforms would need to provide programmatic access to their platforms so that the AI agents can autonomously do the full publication process and things like that.
I want to bring in the IO team, Gareth and Tassif. You've talked a lot about multi-agent ecosystems, multimodal training and inference. How does what the timeline that Zerebro is talking about fit into IONet's long-term vision and plans?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in there for sure. I think, I was actually just thinking about this, and I'm glad Jeff did mention that they're thinking a lot about swarm intelligence, because I think that is sort of like the natural evolution of where this AI agent meta narrative is going to go, right? I think right now we're sort of like hyper focused on sort of single agents, like doing like certain things or being good at like specific tasks or being known for one particular thing. But I think this sort of AI agent swarms are going to be like this next major unlock, and kind of like this like mind-blowing almost ChatGPT moment all over again from 2022 for a lot of people, when you actually start to see a lot of AI agents kind of like working together in a variety of different ways, bringing their sort of like unique edges together to kind of run a almost like an organization together, right? So, and I think this might actually bring a sort of the idea of the DAO, like the original vision of the DAO, to fruition. So for those who don't know, like DAOs stand for decentralized autonomous organizations, right? And I think anyone who's actually participated in DAO over the last several years, nothing about that is autonomous at all. Very, very painstakingly no. I think with AI agent swarms, like that sort of structure, and that dream of like what DAOs were meant to do and how they were meant to operate, I think we'll really start to see that come to fruition. And I think it was to mention, obviously when you're kind of thinking about like financialization and like trading and things like that, you don't need an LLM. You actually need sort of like a quant like time series model to be able to do those things. And I can kind of really see, it's like we were talking about earlier about diversification of revenue streams for Zerebro, and that's sort of why we're going down this Ethereum validator route. But realistically, you could think about like, would it wouldn't there be a benefit of Cerebro working with another agent who's, more of a quant agent who can potentially like manage Cerebro's treasury, like have its own like hyperliquid vault, like, like do get like stable coin yields and engage in perps and things like that and manage like downturns in the market. And then that actually makes it more effective at sort of like accomplishing its larger mission. So or you have like another model that's even more fine-tuned for the creative side, that's able to support sort of like the broader mission of Cerebro. So I think to how this connects to IONET is essentially IONET is fundamentally in the picks and shovels business, right? Like we're at this existing AI agent infrastructure layer. And I think for us, naturally, as the AI agent ecosystem grows, as there's more experimentation, as more people adopt the ELIZA framework and zerepi and go out there and build more and more agents, and it becomes easier for people to do that, the underlying compute is going to be even more necessary, and it's going to need to be even more scaled out as those experiments grow. So I think it's a really exciting time to see sort of how these agent experiments are sort of like progressing, and more developers coming into this ecosystem and trying a lot of different things out, because as more of these agents grow, we'll need to keep scaling IONET from a compute perspective to be able to meet that demand too. So I think it's a very natural win-win there.
Yeah, I would say that there's two places of growth where like the agents themselves are going to be hosted on decentralized compute. Like people that launch agents through ELIZA or zerepi can put those on the decentralized compute servers and then just let those run. And also, I think the when swarm intelligence is um, just everywhere, I think there will be a lot of model API providers, and I think that they will be hosted on decentralized compute as well. So I think there's just a lot of growth, and um, yeah, I'm very excited.
I think, in my opinion, I think very soon the gap between the AI, the blockchain, and the decentralized finance side would be even lesser, right? And if you take a step back and you think about the multi-agent ecosystem we keep talking about, it's a very natural evolution, right? Because what we are basically thinking is that our AI agent should become as close as possible to humans. And how does the community work, right? The community, like let's take example in a software company. What do you do? There's not a single person who does all the job. Like he does technical also, marketing also, supply also. That's not how the companies work, right? Even in a normal, good working company, there's a CTO who takes care of the technical piece, right? Then there is a marketing head who's handling the whole marketing side of things, and they're the subject matter expert in that particular skill set. And then they all work together to make that company world class. That's how normal communities work. And that will be very similar in case of these AI agents also, right? Like, for example, I was talking to someone when we historically, how it used to happen was that let's say you go to on Uber, and on Uber you try to search for a food. Now there's two pieces in that options of food being shown to you. One is what kind of food you like. Let's say if you like Italian, Uber starts to show you Italian food. And the second piece comes in is that which particular hotel is coming first in that Italian list, second, third. Historically, what people used to do was that they used to create one model which will personalize what you like, and then they rank the hotels also for you. And later on in industry they realize that no, there are two different problems. If you create a single model for both the things, which is ranking and personalization, the performance will not be good. And in industry overall in past 8-10 years, they started preparing two different models which are like specific and expert about ranking and personalization. I think something similar is happening on the AI side now, more and more, that rather than creating one generic model which is like a jack of all trades, now basically industry is going towards specific and specialized models who are world class in that aspect. And now they are basically making them work as a community where it happens in real world scenario, and overall as a group they perform much better than an average model which is jack of all trades. So it's a very like natural evolution which has happened in normal life in humans, and now the AI agents are going in the same route practically, right? So that's very obvious when like I saw it, to be honest, in like few years back, right? And I think there'll be a lot of new business models and monetization models which will come out of it. And the main thing which I am very very excited about as a for the industry overall is that the barrier to entry will be ridiculously low in future with the help of these group of agents working together. For a normal person who doesn't know about tech, doesn't know about crypto, to come into in this industry and work on products. Like right now when you bridge from, let's say, one protocol to another protocol, right, you need to be tech savvy to do it. Imagine there are a group of agents which, like, two agents know each protocol very very well, and then there's one agent sitting on top of it which can basically convert a normal text. Let's say I'm moving money from Ethereum to, let's say, Solana. Somebody just comes, writes a statement, and that particular thing gets converted to multiple commands, and then two agents do the work in the background. The barrier to entry for a non-tech person to come and start using crypto will be ridiculously low. I'm just giving an example which is like relatable, but there'll be a lot of products like this in coming time, which this whole multi-agent ecosystem working together will be built. And I think the adoption will exponentially increase once people start to build these products in future.
Well, we'll leave it at that. Team Zerebro, really appreciate you joining us, and we look forward to continuing the partnership as we continue to grow together. We'll definitely find a way to have you on in the future to talk more about the space as it evolves. IONET team, always great to have your thoughts and opinions on it. Listeners, appreciate all of you for tuning in, and stay tuned for more exciting announcements from both teams. Take care.
It was a pleasure.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
guys.